Hello, my name is Pastor Ojimba Alex. You're watching Gospel Faith Television, and today my program is going to be called Slavery Part 4. I've got it written down. Man was treated worse than an animal. So, Slavery Part 4, man was treated worse than an animal. That's the theme of my subject today. Slavery Part 4, man was treated worse than an animal. I was thinking about the whole situation, and I thought to myself, it would be nice for me to define what slavery was all about. And I came up with an idea that slavery, actually it was God that told me this, and he said that slavery was a project. Now, a project means an individual or collaborative enterprise that is carefully planned to achieve a particular aim. So that means the people that went to Africa to go and do the slavery, they already came together wherever they were based, and they carefully planned this. Before slavery happened, there was a plan in place. They planned it and they understood it, and they set out to go and achieve it for a particular aim. And now that particular aim was to bring the black Africans over to the Americas, to Europe, and to the Caribbean. The slave masters already knew what they were gonna do with the slaves. They already knew what they were gonna do with the slaves. So it wasn't a situation where they're thinking, are we gonna go to Africa? And when we go to Africa, what are we doing? No, they already knew why they were going there. They already knew what they were going there for. They already knew who they were aiming at. They already knew what they were gonna do with these people. They already knew that they were gonna turn these people into slaves. But the Africans that were back home at the time didn't have no idea whatsoever. So the slaves were taken all over. The slaves were taken all over. And I think I've got a picture somewhere. I found this picture. They were taken all over the world. You can see it. If you look at this map, you will see that the slaves, they were taken all over. Europe is there somewhere. The Americas is there somewhere. Africa is there somewhere. The Caribbeans is there somewhere. Like, that's Europe there. I can see it from behind. Yeah, that's Europe. That's the Americas there. That's the Americas. North America, South America, and that's Europe there. Actually, this map is upside down, because the first people in the world to ever discover the world map were called the Moors, but that's a different subject altogether. Europe is meant to be at the bottom and Africa is meant to be at the top, but that's a different subject altogether. So, like I'm saying, the slaves were taken all over, to the Americas, to the Europes, and to the Caribbeans. The slaves used to have African names before they were taken, and those African names had meanings. But those meanings were taken away from them. I'll give you an example. There's a name here. This is an African name. It's called Chimezie. So before those African slaves were taken away from Africa, his name wasn't Paul Walsh or Mighty Eagle or Dick the Bulldog Brower. No. Look, this is an African name, Chimezie. So before the slaves even came there, Chimezie means God does good things. God will make things better. Another name, an African name, before they were taken away. Like in America today, you got people with the name Paul Anderson. In Jamaica today, you see a black man darker than me, and his name is Jack Worthington. But maybe before he was taken away as a slave, maybe his name was Taiwo. That's what I'm trying to say. So the African names were taken away from them, and they were given names like, after they were slaved and they were given slave master's name, they took over their slave master's name, like Mr. Ambrose Whitaker. That's not an African name. Mr. Benedict Cheeseman. Before the slave masters came over to Africa, there was no Mr. Black man ever name called Mr. Benedict Cheeseman. So that's the point I'm trying to make. And I'm saying it that the slaves were treated worse than dogs. Yeah, because at least dogs are treated with love by their owners, and dogs are free. But the slaves, when they were captured, they were not free. They were captured from Africa. Captured means taken away. Captured means to take into one's possession or to control another person by force. That's a capture. I'll steal you away and nobody's going to do anything about it. You're now my property. Captured. To catch. To seize by force. To arrest. The black Africans were captured. Yeah, and the slave master, he used to use detrimental language to engage the slaves. What I mean by that is, after the black Africans were taken away from Africa and they became slaves and they were captured, the slave master never spoke to them on a normal level, on a decent level, like, how are you? What are you doing today? Have you eaten? The slave master used language like, you idiot, you stupid man. And the slave would be looking at him like that, scared. You idiot, you stupid man. Shut up. You're mad. They made the slaves mad. And the slave would tell his friend, I'm mad. And they were acting mad because of what the slave master told him. He called him poor. He called the slave a poor man. He called him a slave. He made him become a slave. You know? So the slaves were just there in the plantation to work. And I've got another picture of the slaves in the plantation. Look at that. Look at the slave masters looking at them with their whips and everything. And the slaves were working. They're working their socks off, working their backs off, working their skin off. At this point, they've actually accepted that they are slaves. But before the slave masters came to Africa, they were not working like this. They were very settled. And they were at peace with themselves. Look at them working in the plantation. Work. Working for the next day. Working. It was work. Intensive work in the plantation. The slaves had to go back and work. It was work. The slaves had to go back into their chains. Now look at this slave here. Around his neck, there's a chain there with the slave master whipping him. It was only work. Look at him, he's working in the plantation. They confused their minds. They captivated their minds. The slave became a product of work. The first slaves that were taken away from Africa, they still spoke the African language. So when the slave master spoke English to them, the slave master would say to them, you idiot, come over here now. And the first slaves never spoke English or Spanish. And the first slaves, they spoke in African language. So you said to the slave, you idiot, come over here now. The slave would look at him with his muscles and say, Gini kineku, Iwonyara. What I'm trying to say is that the first slaves that were taken over to the Americas, or to Spain, or Portugal, or South America, or you name it, they never spoke the slave master's language. No, they didn't speak the slave language. But somewhere down the line, the slaves lost their African heritage and their language. Somewhere in the plantation, the African language was beaten out of them. Look at that. It was beaten out of them. Their culture was beaten out of them. The African language was beaten out of the African slaves. The African slave was naked in the plantation. He became naked and had nothing to wear. This is a good example. They're showing their muscles because they work hard, full-time work, no part-time work here, and they cover their private bits. They cover their backside. They cover their penis. That's all it was, and it was work. But if you look at the slave master in this picture, he's wearing designer clothes. I don't know, maybe went to Oxford Street to go and buy some clothes, maybe went to Hollywood to go and buy some clothes, but he's wearing designer clothes, a fashionable hat. Look at the slaves, where's the clothes? That's my point. And the slaves were beaten, they had nothing to wear. The African slave relied on the slave master for food and shelter. The slaves would be hungry for days and weeks and nothing to eat. And sometimes the slave master wouldn't even show up for weeks or months. And the slaves were hungry. And it got to a point when they gave up, when the slave master will knock on the door or whatever, he would chuck food in. That was like being in prison. Oh, the slave master became the hope, the only hope of the slave in the plantation. And I'm talking about his food and his shelter. The African slave had no radio or television for entertainment. All they had around them was chains. That's all they had, chains. No radio, no television for entertainment. Today you got Facebook. You trying to tell me that the slaves in those days, they had Facebook or Twitter or MTV? They didn't have these things. The slave master became their only hope. And the slaves lost their integrity in the plantation. The African slaves lost their self-esteem. They had the lowest of self-esteem. Oh, you know, like you wake up and you got things to look forward to. You say, I'm going to go and get the train. I'm going to go to the cinema. I'm going to go to the stadium. The slaves never had this. All they had was the plantation. They were locked up in chains. Their self-esteem was low. Now, what does self-esteem mean? Self-esteem means they felt unworthy. They felt incapable. They felt incompetent. That means they didn't even feel like human beings anymore. Yeah, because that's what they were going through at the time. The African slaves were captured and put into a whole new world. So when the African slave thought about where he was and where he was taken from, it even brought more low self-esteem upon the African slave. He's in a whole new world, a whole new language. They were terrorized, beaten up, shut down in a whole new world. The free African slave were beaten and weakened in the confusion. In the plantation, they were confused. They were brought in and they were brought into a capitalist system that was already made. You know, I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna have to stop it here. My name is Pastor Ojimba Alex. You've been watching Slavery, Man Was Treated Worse Than an Animal, Part 4A. Let's call this Part 4A, but I'll round it off later with 4B. God bless you. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. Amen.